Welcome to Midlife Magic, a unique channel for unique women. I'd like to start today by getting us grounded in the here and now. There are many, many ways to ground yourself, and I'll be talking about a few more in a little bit. But two of my favorite are, one, to visualize that my legs and my feet are actually rooting into the ground like a tree roots, anchoring down, down, and down until I'm really, really solid and strong, and the rest of my body remains like a tree, soft and swaying. The other one that's a major favorite of mine is with crystals. So any crystal will work, but I generally will use the darker crystals. This is a smoky quartz, and you can do it whatever way you want, but how I do it is I hold it between my palms and then bring my palms to heart center and ground into the crystal until I feel as solid as the crystal is, like I'm a rock. So for those of you tuning in for the very first time, I'm Colleen. I'm a midlife coach, a crystal addict, and a lover of all things woo-woo. Today's topic is one of my favorite topics. It's about crystals. So stop the car. I see a crystal. What we're going to discuss today is what you can do and how you can do it, sort of the basics of getting involved with crystals. I'll present for the first half hour, and then the second half of an hour, I will turn the recording off, and we will be in a safe space where you can share, ask questions, and we can have conversations about crystals or anything that you would like to chat about. So working with crystals is very, very personal. You can use them to help you anywhere and everywhere. Crystals become your friends. You develop a relationship with them that will in time just amaze you. They're very good for your general well-being. They're good for dispelling negative energies, clearing rooms of energies, clearing yourself. You can use crystals for cord cutting. They help with emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, all different kinds of work can be done with crystals. The only thing you have to do is be open and willing to let the crystals do the work for you. So what we want is not always what we need. And often the crystal that you choose may not really do the job for you. And if that's the case, then it's potentially that you need a different crystal, or that the crystal's trying to do a different job for you. Where do you get your crystals? Where do you source them? So the ethics of crystal purchasing is probably, it's quite important. So you want to know where your crystals come from. You want to make sure that they are sourced ethically, that they're mined ethically, that they're not gotten through slave labor or blowing up the side of the mountain or whatever different practices there are. And there are a lot of different ones that are not so ethical. So it's kind of a good idea to know your vendor, know your retailer, and know that they are going to take care of that part for you, because you're not always going to be able to find that out. Any reputable vendor or retailer should be able to tell you where the crystal came from, how it was mined, what it took to get to their store. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. And when you do first start on your crystal journey, it can be really overwhelming. There'll be just so much to choose from. And so the energy will just be massive. And it can be a lot of fun, or it can be a little bit scary as well. So just take your time and know that you've got a good retailer, that they are going to be honest with you, And the other one that you got to watch out for, especially now that crystals have become so mainstream, is you got to watch out for the fakes. Some of the ones now that are really getting more predominant with fakes are lapis lazuli, turquoise, say larmar, citrine. So just if you know your crystal seller and you trust them, you should be fine. So if anybody's been watching me for any length of time or knows me, you know that I'm pretty much, there are no rules, only tools. And what I mean by that is anything that you begin or any journey you begin on, you have to do what's best for you and you have to do what fits with your lifestyle. So there's so much information out there and so many books and so many paths and so many dogmas. I just recommend take what you learn or what you hear, sift through it all, and then take what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, just put it aside. You don't need to worry about it. Your strongest tool is going to be your intuition. And that might take you a little bit of time to develop, but intuition will for sure be your guiding light, your friend in the darkness. It'll help you make the right decisions. There is no wrong or right, and everybody's got their own opinion. I might do something one way and you might do it another way. One crystal may work for one person and it might not work for you in the same way. So just take what calls to you or what resonates with you and let that work for you. So raw or natural, again, no rules. I have both and I love both. So some people believe that it can only be raw. I believe that the natural or the energy of the crystal comes through whether it's raw, natural, or polished. The crystal is still in the energy. Oh, the energy is still in the crystal. The other two that I actually don't participate in, but a lot of people do, and I will talk about those a little bit later, are programming and charging crystals. The one that I do, and I do it quite often, and it's probably my only rule, although I don't stick with it all the time, is that I do cleanse my crystals on a regular basis. Depending how many you've got, we'll talk about this in a little bit. It can be a challenge to cleanse your crystals in some of the manners that are out there. So I'll dive into that a little bit deeper. So short introduction to crystals is, I'm not going to bore you with the physics or the science. I don't really have any interest in that. And I refer to minerals, rocks, crystals, all in one kind of lump. So they're all crystals to me. There's over 4,500 different minerals and new ones being discovered all the time throughout the world. So it would be impossible for anyone to actually know every single crystal or rock or mineral. The thing about crystals is they are like us or like the table. They are energy. Everything is energy. And so our energy can get knocked topsy-turvy just due to life. Stuff happens and it spins us around and rattles our energy. Whereas the energy of the crystal, because its structure is almost a perfect geometric pattern, the energy of the crystal stays very, very strong. And that's why they work so well with us with healing, because we can use crystals to entrain energy. So it brings our energy up, meets their energy, and then it can balance. One other thing that I will mention with crystals is that they have a Mohs hardness, M-O-H-S. And what that is that's the hardness of the crystal, the diamond being the hardest, and then something like a selenite being one of the softest. So therefore, not all of them can be put in water. If you're unsure, just Google the Mohs Hardness chart, and it'll tell you kind of what Mohs hardness your crystal is. And anything under about a 7 shouldn't go in water. I personally don't use water very often, except for some of my really hard crystals. So before you begin on this crystal journey, I suggest you ground yourself, because they are energy and they can kind of catch you off guard if you're not totally grounded. At the beginning, we talked about 2 ways of grounding. One was with crystals, and the other one was imagining that you're a tree, or that your legs are tree roots going into the ground. Other ways to ground are hug a tree. Use a salt block. I have a salt block, a Himalayan salt block under my desk that I put my feet on. It just kind of keeps me in the here and now during the day. Some people use earthing mats. You can lay on the ground. You can walk barefoot. You can use visualization, meditation, breath work, water spritzing, whatever kind of works for you that will bring you to sort of a grounded level where you feel like you're grounded and strong. So, excuse me, how do you choose crystals? That's a fun one. You just buy them all. No. Choosing crystals, you can use your intuition. You can pick them by color. You can pick them by healing property. Just the attraction. Rub your hands together and then just roll them over the crystals, sense the energy. You can use a pendulum over the crystal. So you need to know your yes and no with your pendulum. And then you can just ask the pendulum, is this the right crystal for me? What else? Your inner yes or no, if you're into any of the muscle work. So the inner yes and the inner no, where your body moves forward or moves backwards. Close your eyes and just pick one out of just blindly pick one. It might call to you as you walk through the store, a crystal. It'll happen at some point. You'll be walking by and you'll think, oh no, that one, no. And then you'll go back, and then you'll be no, and then you'll go back, and you'll finally end up, it's called your name. It wants you to take it home. It's chosen you. So now we go on to, once you get your crystals, you've bought them, and you don't really know the whole journey that they've been on. So we know they came from Mother Earth. We don't know how they came from Mother Earth. We hope it's ethical. But then they were thrown in a box or thrown in bags, and then they were shipped either across the ocean or across the country in a truck. And then they were offloaded and handled some more, and then they got to the store and they were handled some more. So by the time you get a crystal, it could have been handled 10, 20, maybe more times. And along the way, the crystal will have picked up a little bit of everybody's energy. So if your truck driver was having a really bad day and was winging that box of crystals out the back of the truck, they would probably pick up some of that negative energy. So when you bring your crystals home, even if you don't cleanse them regularly, I still kind of like to always cleanse mine the first day they come home. My favorite for cleansing is moonlight, and that is my go-to other than smudging. And depending on your climate, you can either put them outside in the moonlight. Doesn't have to be a full moon, doesn't have to be a new moon, although those amplify the energy if you do have that opportunity. And then you just let them have a little overnight bath or a few hours, just a little vacation for them to clear the energy. Sunlight is another way to cleanse, and a lot of people really like that. I tend to not use it because it can fade your crystals depending on your crystal, like especially amethyst. And potentially if you have a very, very clear quartz, and depending on how intense the sun is, it can ignite. So rather than risk doing that on my back deck, I just use the moonlight. Water, fresh water or salt water, they're great ways to cleanse, but be totally aware of the Mohs hardness because you don't want your crystal to dissolve. The other thing that you need to kind of be careful of with any kind of salt, whether it's Himalayan salt or sea salt, is salt can damage some crystals. I've seen it damage malachite. It's not like it does it every time, but it depending on how strong the crystal is, it can damage it. Brown rice is another alternative. You just little bowl of brown rice and you lay your crystals in there. You can bury them in the ground, but I would recommend you put them in a sand pail or a flower pot so you can find them, because just burying them in the ground, they might, I don't know, the cat might dig them up or the dog might dig them up, something might happen. And breath, so you can just take your crystal in your hand and then just blow on it 3 times or 5 times, whatever your number is. That's a really good one for kids because it's really simple for them to use. I mentioned smudge, so with sage and feather, you can smudge. And when you have a large collection of crystals and you can't haul them all to the moonlight, you can just open the blinds in that room or that shelf and then smudge that area or spritz it, or you can use sound like with a drum, a hand drum, or bells or a singing bowl. You can use other crystals. Then again, this is where people really kind of, they're not divided, but there's a lot of opinions. Some people say selenite will cleanse all crystals. Some people say it won't. So it's a matter of personal preference. I do use a selenite bar for my working crystals in between clients. And that it seems to work well. So the warnings again is be careful with water and salt. Be careful with extreme temperatures. So if you live in a very, very cold climate, I don't know that you'd want to put them out at -40 for fear that they might crack. And if you live in an extremely hot climate, you don't want to leave them sitting in the blazing sun for fear that they may ignite. For cleaning your crystals, physically cleaning them, especially the ones that are raw and kind of pointy and can break off or splinter, just a really nice fluffy makeup brush works really, really well for just physically cleaning the dust and the dirt. So what can you do with your crystals? You can wear them, you can carry them. So you can wear jewelry or bracelets, carry them in your purse, in your car, hang them in your windows, put them on your shelves, put them at your entrance. It's totally personal what you want to do. You can have them in a closed cabinet. You can put them in boxes. It's totally what you want to do. So there is no right and there is no wrong. So working with crystals, what jobs can you give them? You can give them healing jobs. If you have a broken bone, there's crystals like chrysoprase and fluorite are really good for broken bones, just to help the healing process. It's not going to take away the break, but it will help the healing. You can use crystals to balance your chakras. Use your crystals to entrain your energy, bring you back to center, bring you back to ground. You can use crystals for gazing and developing your intuition, looking in the crystal for messages or little breakthroughs, messages from your guides. Use crystals for enhancing and magnifying your meditation. You can tap into your subconscious with crystals. You can use your crystals with other modalities, such as maybe Reiki or EFT or tapping, any of those. So crystals can just, they can become part of every part of your everyday life. The one thing that I didn't do in the beginning, and came to regret was I didn't catalog my crystals. So I thought, well, I've only got 2 or 3 or 5 and I'll remember, but pretty soon I had many more. So I really recommend that you catalog with a photo. You can do this electronically or in a photo album, old school. That's how I did mine. A photo, where you purchased it, what you paid for it, when you purchased it, and any other kind of information that you would want to look back on, whether it's the healing properties or maybe the legend or anything to do with where that crystal came from and why it came to be and what it's good for. The other thing that that's really good for is that if at some point you want to pass them on, you'll have all that information to pass on to the next buyer or person that you gift it to. Excuse me. Storing your crystals, again, totally personal. Some people will tell you it has to be all natural. Some people will tell you don't use plastic. Some people will tell you you can only use red silk, or you can only use black linen, or there's just so many different opinions. And my opinion is do what works for you. If you want them out all over and you want to dust them, then that's your choice. If you want them all in boxes because you've got small kids and you don't want them playing with them, totally, again, all your choice. You decide. You can put them in baskets. You can put them around the house. You can have little bowls. You can display them. You just decide how you would like to keep your crystals and what makes you feel good about your crystals. So the one that I talked about earlier that I don't actually do is programming and charging crystals. But the overall steps to programming or charging a crystal is what you're doing is you're giving your crystal one job only. And then when that job's done, then you're going to uncharge it or unprogram it and give it a new job. So you choose your crystal, you set your intention, you then would spend time, build the relationship with that intention and that crystal. You would focus and meditate on it doing that job and getting that particular result that you want. You connect with it daily, whether it's for 1 minute or 2 seconds, whichever. Generally, it would be on an altar somewhere, and that would make it easy for you to connect with it. One school of thought is no one else can ever touch that crystal, only you can touch it. You would use your dominant hand, which is the hand you write with, on the bottom, and then your crystal, and then your non-dominant hand on the top. So the dominant hand would be sending the energy, and the non-dominant would be receiving it. That is crystal programming and charging in a really, really loose step-by-step way. As I said, I don't actually do crystal programming and charging, so there are probably lots of other opportunities and options on Google if you're interested in more. So that brings us to the end of this short little intro to crystals. And throughout my channel in my next few weeks, my next few months, I will be introducing different crystals and different exercises in with all the other midlife magic. And I really look forward to sharing that all with you. So I'm excited for you, and I really hope to see you next week on Midlife Magic for more tools, tips, exercises, and celebrations. And I will now end the recording.